Boat vlog. That's not the motor. This is boat vlog. Yes, discovering lots of stuff about V6s. Mostly it is done. The motor, it's good. One of the weird things that happened with this motor was the, I don't know if any of you are familiar with sort of motor parlance, but the deck heights were funny on it. So like the back piston on this side was in the hole about sort of 1/4 mil, 0.25, and the front piston was protruding out of the bore about 1 millimeter. So that would have been a pretty rough running motor, and I'd be very surprised if the front head wouldn't have clouted, the front piston would have not clouted the head, because there just wasn't enough clearance for it to run. And that clearance is all important. All this is what came with one of the motors. One of the front covers and water pumps was better than the other, so I used that. There's my Hall effect sensor all set up. Obviously, there's a pulley there. Yeah, so not a tensioner, but just a pulley. All new head gaskets. It's all standard stuff. There's nothing special. The only thing I replaced the head bolts, obviously, as you have to on these, and they are very, very tight. So, and that doesn't surprise me at all. What I haven't done is replace the rod bolts, and I'm going to get some advice today. And if I need to replace them, that's an easy job. I can get to them very, very easily and just pop new ones in and tension them. So, obviously using the later type of gasket. And now I've got this sump. I've got the sump that's on this motor, which is a broken one, which possibly may be getting cut off at the flange all the way around and just constructing a whole new sump. Or I've got the sump that I've already started to modify, which is in one of the earlier videos, which is basically one, it's neither of these. The earlier motors didn't have this mount set up on them, the back mount, and I'll just show you that. Hang on, pop it on. We just sit it up there, the bolts, that's fine. As you can see, what they did on the later motors, the Series 2 and the later Holdens, they actually made that part of the mounting setup in the back of the motor. And you know, I'd like that, but I'm not sure how I'm going to go for space. But considering that it sits a lot lower than the front of the sump, I don't think I'm going to have too much trouble. But I'd like to have that on there, so it's possible I'm going to extend one of these, which makes the job a hell of a lot more difficult. So I can I'll make a piece that comes up, goes across like that, and probably comes up here and welds all the way along there. Welds all the way along this edge and then across. So it's going to be it's basically going to be a U-piece with a lot of cutting and grinding and cutting and shutting to make everything good. And then I'll probably just cut if you can imagine, I'll cut a hole in the center, and it really doesn't have to be much of a hole, just so that the oil can access, and I can access with the pickup, because the pickup needs to, basically if you're looking at the motor here, this is the back of the motor, and now in a boat this is going to be the lowest point, so I need the pickup to sit about there. I suppose I could put it here and just set the oil level at a point where there's always going to be oil there, but I'm doubtful that would actually work, especially if the motor is on an extreme angle. I mean, I like the design of the sump, but it does need to be modified, which is a bit of a bummer with this motor, unless you can aluminium weld or know someone who can. It's an expensive job and a bit of a fucking pain in the ass too. So yeah, that's pretty much that. Still haven't sorted out a flywheel. Still sniffing around wrecking yards trying to find a manual flywheel that I can adapt my drive onto. There's a guy in West Swan who's advertising there's a guy in West Swan who's advertising an actual drive coupling for a V6, which is pretty good. So basically the motor's together. I've only fitted the valley cover manifold under there. You can't really see any of it, but yeah, I fitted that. I made a provision in it for the EFI, the EFI temp sender, because that's necessary. And I've got this one, which is the Mercruiser one, so I can get an indication on the dash of how hot the motor's running. So I'll be running 2 of those, which is a bit of a stupid overkill. But I've got my cam position sensor, I've got my crank position sensor, I've got a temp sensor. I mean, once I sort out my MAF sensor and all the other stuff, and sort out a belt system that's going to work, because this isn't going to have power steering, it's not going to have air conditioning, so I've got to sort some sort of serpentine belt setup that's going to work just with an alternator and a water pump. And that's probably going to mean buying a multitude of belts until one fucking fits. I haven't got the tensioner on there yet, but the tensioner's there and it's in pretty good nick, and all the bearings seem good and the spring's okay. So I'll just clean that up and bolt it on it probably today. And yeah, that's how that's coming along. And I've got my other motor, which is the second motor that I've got, and all the assorted bits. And I'm about to start welding. Actually, I'm about to start. Hang on. This pipe. Okay. As you can see here, there's my 316. There's my 316 plates, and these will fit. This pipe will fit into there, and these will be my mounting bolts. This is what my mounting bolts will be fitting through. So I'll be cutting them off probably a bit long. And then once all this is welded, all the bends, which are, I've got the bends anyway. Once all the bends are welded into here, then I'll weld in the short lengths of 12mm pipe, the short lengths of pipe, and they'll be my mounting setup. And what they're there for is to, and I'll weld them at the bottom. And what they're there for is to basically to so I've got a waterproof. These will run through the water jacket basically. They're 316 as well. Everything's 316, and I've set up my welder with some 316 wire, the MIG. Now, the only way I could get really good results with the 316 in the MIG, and I tried every setting you can imagine, where I was falling down is I wasn't preheating. As soon as I started to get heat into things, they would weld beautifully. And that's, I think, going to be the trick here, is probably to have the, before I'm going to do a weld, like say weld one of the bends into here, is just to run over it with the oxy and get it up just before it's turning blue, or just after it turns blue, before it turns red, and then start welding. Once you do that, it welds beautifully. It welds like ordinary MIG. And if you got your settings right, it'll just go on like butter. It's not a problem. But once, if it's cold, just forget about it. You're not going to get really good results, and you're certainly not going to get anything to seal. So, and that's my big thing. As you can see here, this is the spare sump that I picked up from the rubbish bin. And for a while I thought I was just going to cut the whole thing off and just use the flange and make a box. And actually it's still a good idea, but not actually very viable. It's a lot of work. You know, it's probably not worth doing, to be honest. But hey, you know, it's trial and error, and I've got 3 sumps to fuck around with, so I can really run any sort of setup I want. And I can even actually, one of the things I can do is put a piece of plate onto the sump I've already made, I can put a piece of plate onto that and make mounts wherever I want them, actually, because the whole thing with mounting the Mercruiser mounting plate onto the back is that it was never designed to fit this motor, so everything's going to be adapted anyway. So it's really not going to matter. So I can do basically what I want. I can mount the whole thing up, make the flywheel, make the whole thing up, mount it, and then see where it's going to sit. And then probably, what I'll probably do is start making pieces like spaces of aluminium that come off here, and wherever they've got to go, I'll drop them down to where they've got to go, and then drill them and tap them and bolt the ring to them. I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. I mean, I'm fairly sure I'm going to be able to get this to work. Then I'm going to run it off. The other thing I've done here, I've eliminated the oil filter with this piece that I made. This is just for space saving, because the oil filter sticks out to about here, and this has got to basically fit between the rails on my boat. So I made this piece, which is an oil filter eliminator, all the holes all the way through over 13 mil, which is what these are, which is what these passages basically are, 13 mil. And there's your pressure relief, your bypass, I mean, for your filter. So what I'm going to do there is, I'm going to bolt this on somehow. I'm going to cross thread this. It's just hard to do one-handed. There it is. I'm going to bolt this on. When it tightens up, these come round to the top. These the two holes, the in and the out. And what I'm going to do is, this motor has two tubes, the heater tubes actually. One comes out of here and comes straight out there. One comes out of the top of the, it comes out of the thermostat housing down here and comes straight out here. And then I've got two lines that are pumping in and out of the water pump. Now what I'm going to do there is to make a little oil cooler, or find a little wet oil cooler, and I'm going to run it out. I'm going to run out of this adapter into the oil cooler, out of the oil cooler into a remote oil filter, and then straight back in. So it'll have cooled, filtered oil all the time, and I think that's probably going to help me a lot in keeping my engine temp down. But the piece of resistance is that even though I found that other oil cooler the other day, this came up for sale, and it is a very good condition, genuine Mercruiser freshwater cooling system. So at last my fucking boat isn't going to be running on raw water, which is a great thing. I can literally just plumb this up to the water getting pumped out of the leg and to the motor, put a radiator cap on it and a little expansion tank, and I am in business, which is a lot better system than anything I've come up with before. Before I mount it, I'm going to have to fit all the front, whatever front accessory stuff I've got to fit onto the front here. I've got to mount all that up and then start making mounts that I can bolt that to. I do have a lot of empty bolt holes, which is terrific because of the no power steering, no air conditioning, that sort of thing. I do have a lot of places that I can bolt things, which is great because basically I'm going to make two brackets that come out and hold that in nice and level and in front of the motor at the right height, so water's getting everywhere. And there's hopefully my cooling system woes will be fixed. I bought a but I got to do that after the accessory drive's on there, so I know where to mount anything. So yeah, and I got this for $400, which was actually less than it was going to cost me to build up the other one as a separate unit. And it's I bought a seal kit for it the other day. I put new seals here and here. And like I said, it's basically ready to bolt up, and it's plug and play, which I'm really excited about. I've actually got a decent cooling system on it. It would have been nice if it had a little oil cooler attached to it, but it doesn't, and I'll have to make one. But actually, that's not that big a deal. That's a very easy thing to make, actually. something that small. I can make that out of basically the 316 pipe that I've got here. Other than that, that's about it really. I mean, I got a V6 motor, whoopee shit, and yeah, I think it's going to come together okay. Fitting in the boat, I've no idea whether anything's going to fit. I think it's going to be a whole lot of cutting and shutting to get this to work, but like I say, I watched a few videos and the guys seem to fit them in okay, and yeah, I think I'm probably going to have to modify the sump pretty heavily. I have not tried to put that in there yet, but I'm just getting the boat going. At the moment it's running. I just rebuilt the whole fuel system on it, and that fuel system will be compatible in the end with this once I change the pump. So you know, it's coming together reasonably well. I've got a good filtration system on it. I've got a filter and water collector on the sucking side, and I've got just a spin-on cartridge, a spin-on fuel filter on the other side of the pump. So the pump's between two filters, which is seems to be the optimal setup, and I can catch most of the water before it gets to the pump, because you know, boat motors collect fucking water. But yeah, the whole top end went on, and it was in pretty good nick considering the Ks that these two motors have done. It's almost unbelievable that the condition that they're in. But like I say, some funny machining stuff where I never told you how I solved the problem. I actually machined the tops. Oops, torque wrench went fucking astray there. I had to machine the tops of the pistons to get them to sit in the holes properly. I don't want this to be a particularly high compression motor. I want it to be smooth. I want it to be smooth running and smooth idling and all that sort of thing. So it doesn't tear my boat apart. And I want it to be balanced. And that's one of the other reasons I want to run it out of the boat, so I can put it on a stand and put a vibration meter on it and actually balance the thing externally until it's at a point where it's sort of acceptable, because it's bits of all different motors, and all the reciprocating parts are out of the later motor, but the actual cases are off an earlier motor. So I've got to make everything work and be balanced. It does have a balanced shaft, obviously, which will smooth things out considerably. But yeah, the big thing is once I put whatever flywheel I'm going to put on the back of it, I've got to balance that as well. So that's what I'm going to be doing, just trying to get things in balance, trying to get everything to work together, and I don't think I'm too far off it, to be honest, having a running motor. So there's the inlet manifold. I haven't done anything towards unlocking the, sorry, crap, the rat poison. Might do a video on that actually. Killing my rats. Harmonic balancers, I've got 2 of those. This is my injector setup, obviously still set up on the manifold, on the plenum I mean. And this is my old plenum gasket, which is why I'm hanging on to that, I don't know. That can go in the bin. But yeah, I don't know whether I actually need the airflow that sits out here on them. There's an airflow meter. I think I'm going to need one of those, and I don't have one, so that'll be a trip to the wrecking yard. And I want to... Oh yeah, that's much better. Yeah, I've got to get the ECM unlocked, and I'm in sort of talks now. I had a preliminary talk with a guy who said that he could do it here in Perth, which is fine. That's not a problem. And I told him that I wasn't looking for performance at all. I said 200 horsepower will be absolutely fine. And I think they're rated at about 205 horsepower standard. It is going to have a better set of headers on it, because I'm making them. They'll be better than the cast ones. But the fact that... well, the thing about that is that it's really going to depend. The tune is really going to be... So I'm going to have to restrict them a fair bit, I think, to get the tune right. But, I mean, that's not really a big deal. I mean, the whole... Where is it? No, there it is. the whole exhaust system goes into this, which for a V6 it should be plenty. I mean, it's quite a big pipe, and that dumps out through the prop, and there's a relief hole as well in the side, like a telltale hole also, that dumps exhaust. I think it should be plenty big for a V6. That's about the size of the tailpipe they have on the V6s of that era, so very similar size anyway. So that's my, and I've just got to make a Y piece that goes onto that to obviously pick up both of the water-cooled manifolds. And yeah, there's that. Yeah, I haven't even started the manifolds, to be honest, except for that counter boring and stuff. Counter boring and cutting up a few of the bends, which are secreted somewhere in my fucking. And they'll be in one of those. I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, I found a guy who's sort of talking to me about, and I was sort of asking him some pretty difficult questions, like, can the motor operate? Can you fix it so that the motor operates without the exhaust, the O2 sensors in the exhaust? Because that would be problematic on an outboard. But the guy that I've seen who's done this actually built wet manifolds with O2 sensors in them. So yeah, and I'm not sure how long they would last, to be honest. But having never done it, I mean, I definitely defer to him, and I'm probably I'll get in contact with him through YouTube and ask how that worked. But and also I've got to basically, I want just an on-off switch. I'm going to put an ignition switch on it. I don't want to have the ring antenna with the remote key and that sort of stuff on a boat, because I mean, if you drop the key in the water, that's the fucking end of it, and you're stranded. So I just want an on-off switch, which I can just turn the fucking thing on and push a button and it'll go, which is a much better idea actually. So, but I got to rewire the whole boat, which is going to be fucking action because there's a lot going on, and rewire all the gauges and fart about like that, which is I'm not super excited about, but that's the time-consuming and shitty stuff you've got to do when you're adapting things. So, you know, it's not like I haven't done it before, and what I might end up doing is using parts of the original setup and then running new stuff obviously for the electronics and whatever other oil pressure lights and fucking whatever shit I got to do. And yeah, that's about it at the moment. But yeah, I'm still sort of trying to get info out of guys about what can actually be done with the ECM, what functions can be switched on and off, and because a lot of it's got to go. I mean, a lot of it, I just want to operate one box. I don't want the BCM and the ECM. I just want the ECM so I can basically start the motor, rev it, and that's all I need to do, you know? It's a very simple setup, and if he can put something in there that, like a map, which will just allow me to have sort of a bit of torque and some drive, I mean, I'm perfectly happy with that. So, all right, that's the end of that vlog. I'll see you soon.